That's why there's so many over estrogenizing chemicals, estrogen mimickers, that take this compound out of the human physiology. I personally know an individual, a man, who's a friend of mine, who had such a problem with testosterone, I won't mention any names, but had such a problem with testosterone that his doctor told him, for all intents and purposes, you have the hormonal balance of a woman. Your body is mimicking the hormonal aspects of a woman because your testosterone levels are so low, they're almost non-existent for what they should be as a man. And this individual had to have testosterone injections. I'm not even sure he might even still be taking them. So, what I want to say about courage today, I think people will get the gist of the message by what I've put out there. There's still an enormous amount of ignorance in society. But I don't necessarily believe that any amount of talking is going to remedy that ignorance, because these people are willfully ignorant. But not only willfully ignorant, they are cowards. Period. And their cowardice is not going to allow them to see the truth, accept the truth, and act upon the truth. And no amount of suffering is going to develop courage. Courage is something that has to be worked within the individual to be built up, to be built upon. And that takes time, especially if someone has lived in a state of cowardice, softness, weakness for their whole lives. That's why they want a society of so-called men that aren't men at all, raised by, in many cases, single women who don't care about anything but creature comfort, getting their way, getting what they want out of men, getting what they want out of the state, and aren't concerned with freedom whatsoever, not even a little bit. These aren't men, folks. They're little children. They have arrested development, not only spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physical arrested development, because their hormonal balance is completely off. Their testosterone levels are completely off. The thing I want to kind of wrap up on is the idea that, and it's the second part of the main topics that I wanted to get into today, is, and I brought this up because of the whole world situation, of what we're going through. Again, it's not like we haven't been through this before. There's many people that insist that somebody can only learn something through first-hand knowledge, through actually doing it themselves. And I reject this notion. I talked about this on the Veritas show that I did with Mel Fabregas, which I think was a really, really phenomenal interview. It's up on the news section, and on the right now it's in the recent news on the left-hand side of the whatonearthishappening.com website. I definitely highly recommend people to check it out. Mel's an excellent interviewer, and he does good work in his own right on his radio show, Veritas Radio. So in that interview, I talked about, Mel actually asked me the question, do people have to learn through suffering? And I basically answered that, suffering can definitely be a teacher, chaos can be a teacher, but is it 100% required to learn that way? No, it is not. You do not have to learn through first-hand experience. Is first-hand experience a absolute clear teacher? Oh yeah, without a doubt. But I gave the example, if somebody had never seen fire before, and you wanted to explain to them the essence of fire, could you communicate the essence of fire to them without them having to put their hand in the fire? And the answer is yes, you could explain that to people. People will insist, oh no, you can't. They would have to feel it. They would have to know. You can garner what the essence of something is by hearing about it, seeing images of it, having somebody write something down about it, having somebody tell you about it. Absolutely. If your ego is not so powerful that it says, I can't take any of that, I can't accept any of that, no matter how logically the argument is structured, no matter how many examples are provided and shown to me. I need to go and do that harmful thing for myself, and you go put your hand in the fire. That would be ego, especially if there's a ton of evidence built up to explain what that thing is and how it works. And, this is what a lot of people erroneously, even in the truth movement, in the New Age community, whatever you want to call these movements, insist that things have to be learned firsthand. And no, they don't. This is what mystery schools were set up to teach people. If you want to learn it the hard way, then yeah, go do it firsthand. Which is why you want to learn how to be moral, and you want to learn what actions not to take, because you're creating chaos as a result. Well, keep doing what you're doing, which is completely wrong, and creating tyranny and enslavement in society, and you're going to learn firsthand why you shouldn't do those things. Does that need to happen that way? Do you need to go into tyranny to understand what freedom is? No, you do not. I mean, this whole idea is not the way the law of balance works. This is not the way the laws of polarity work. You absolutely do not have to go into that extreme to understand what something is. You can garner it through what you might call second-hand knowledge, but at some point it was first-hand knowledge. Things can be taught down to another generation. Things can be taught from someone that didn't go through that experience, why it's not a good thing to take that experience, that negative experience. You do not need to burn your hand to learn that fire is hot, folks. If somebody else puts their hand in the fire, or if somebody had put their hand in a fire 100 years ago, and you know what the effect on the flesh is going to be, you do not need to repeat the experiment. I think we've had enough examples of how tyranny in society works, and what it does to the human spirit, and what it does to human innovation and motivation and consciousness, to understand this is not a good road to go down. So, this whole idea that we have to experience that thing and we have to have that first-hand gnosis, I reject it thoroughly. Second-hand information taken from people with wisdom who are trying to convey it and communicate it down to people who have not necessarily been through that experience is valid and legitimate. If it's true and somebody understands how it works and they convey it down to somebody secondhand, that is a valid and legitimate method of learning. But the ego has to be removed from the equation. That has to be gotten out of the way. You have to think, I'm not so important that I absolutely must have that first-hand experience. You hear so many people say this nonsense. Unless I experience it for myself, it isn't real. Oh, really? I mean, this is nonsense. I mean, please. I've never sailed a big ocean liner. Oh, I guess that can't be done because it's not real then until I do it. I mean, people are idiots with how they think. The logical fallacies that they come up with, they're really, really brain dead. They're brain damaged and brain dead in many cases. Because the ego thinks like that. The ego thinks there are no absolute truths. The ego thinks that there is no objective reality. The ego thinks that I'll make reality the way I want it to be just by my thoughts. The ego thinks unless I experience it, it isn't real. The ego thinks my perception is the only reality. Bullshit! There's objective reality independent from you. And if you don't think so, you're a solipsist, which is the biggest form of mental illness in the world. Moreover, what it is it's wanting to be God. That's what this really comes down to. People think they're the arbiters of truth, and they're the arbiters of reality. I'll make things the way I want them to be, ignore how they really are, because I prefer them that way, and I'd rather have reality be that way. And so therefore I'll just think it and it'll be. Yeah, like you're God. Good luck with that. That's why we're going through the experience we're going through, folks. You want to try to be God, you're going to be put in chains. In chains. And you're going to stay there. Till your ego breaks down and realize, I'm not that thing. I'm not God. I'm not the creator of the universe. I'm not the creator of reality. Laws exist in this realm. I'm bound by those laws. Those laws are here for my uplift and benefit, and I need to learn how they work. The ego wants no part of that. That's what the ego is. Not this sense of self that the New Age movement constantly tries to convince you the ego is. Oh, we need to dissolve that barrier. You know? Why? So I'm floating off in a spiritual haze someplace and I don't know, what my rights are? So when somebody encroaches, I'm like, oh, we're all one and it's okay. And, this person it's no fault of their own. There is no such thing as fault. It's all just an experience. I mean, these people are like gone. There's no help for them in many cases because they're brain damaged. That's where a lot of people are at, folks. The more and more I look at society, the more and more I realize just how sane I am through the knowledge that I've taken in. And how insane other people are. And how in a state of complete imbalance they are in. And it saddens me because here's one of the things I wanted to get into last week a little bit, which I'll touch on for a moment now before I wrap up. It is highly unfortunate that we are connected to all of these other people, to the morons out there, who it's all just an experience and it doesn't matter what happens and nothing that happens in the physical domain is meaningful. All just as imbalanced, and unfortunately we're all connected to all of these idiots. Their ignorance is our enslavement. The people who care about truth and freedom, we're enslaved by them. And their ignorance and their mental enslavement is our enslavement, unfortunately. Because there's no place we can just go to be free. It'd be nice and easy to say, hey, slaves and masters and slaves, enjoy your little drama down here on earth, but we're out. When you figure that out and you can show the place that you go physically, not just saying, oh, you can go to a mental place. I'll go to my safe space where there's no tyranny. It's just all in my mind. No, that's not what I'm talking about. New Age dunces. Okay? I'm not talking about that. Show me a physical place you can go to escape tyranny. As a person living on planet Earth. And when you have that, you could say, you know what? Masters and slaves, enjoy your little earth drama hell that you've created here, and we're out. But until you could show me that place, you're connected to all these other idiots. And that means there's only one way to change the situation if you want to be free, and that is to change their mindset by putting information forward at all times and places. That's what the great work is, and that's why it's so resisted. Because that takes courage to do that work. Because you have to not care about what other people think about you. You have to not care about the comfort that you're going to receive from other people. Whether it's an employer or a spouse, etc. We are bound to those other individuals, unfortunately. I don't want it to be like that, but again, I'm not a solipsist who says my perceptions are the reality, and if I don't want it to be that way, it magically becomes not that way. No, I recognize it is this way, whether I want it to be this way or not. It may be unfortunate, but it is also true that we are connected to these other people. That's why courage is so vitally important to be able to even start doing the great work, to change yourself and then to influence other people to go through that same change that you went through. To recognize that there is no such thing as authority, that it's all illegitimate. The most dangerous religion on the face of the earth.